Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to your favorite news destination. You're watching In Your Interest with me, Kabir Naqvi. On the show tonight, the game has changed dramatically. Lok Sabha has just passed the Promotion and Regulation of Online Gaming Bill 2025, throwing the entire online gaming industry into turmoil. With a sweeping mandate now, the bill bans all online money games, regardless of whether they're based on skill, based on chance, or both. From rummy to poker, fantasy sports to paid tournaments, anything that requires users to pay to play for cash prizes now faces a 3-year jail term and a 1 crore rupee fine, or both of these punitive measures. The law now says that no person shall offer, shall indulge, or engage in online money games. The government argues that this bill is about protecting citizens. The government insists that real money gaming is nothing but gambling in disguise. And whilst banning money gaming, the bill excludes competitive skill-based e-sports played in virtual arenas under recognized rules. It also excludes digital games without the money stakes. The gaming industry is shell-shocked, calling this move a killer blow, putting the entire industry in a death knell. And opposition leaders are demanding a pause, claiming that the law could kill India's sunrise sector.
एक बड़ी चिंता का कारण बन के उभरा है ऑनलाइन मनी गेम्स। ऑनलाइन मनी गेम्स के कारण लोगों में एडिक्शन हो रहा है। जगह जगह से इस तरह की खबरें आती हैं कि परिवार की बचत सारी की सारी गेमिंग के अंदर चली गई। कई जगह एक्सट्रीम केसेस है सुसाइड के। अभी हाल ही में टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया में एक आर्टिकल छपा था, 31 दिन में 30 सुसाइड ऑनलाइन गेमिंग के कारण। और एक तरीके से ये गेमिंग डिसऑर्डर बन गया है, जिसको वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने भी पब्लिक हेल्थ इश्यू मान के उसको एक ऑनलाइन गेमिंग डिसऑर्डर का नाम दिया है, जिसके कारण एक सीरियस समस्या समाज में सब जगह से फैल गई है। सब जगह से आ रहा है उसका फीडबैक। करीब करीब सांसद गण जितने भी मुझे मिलते हैं, जनप्रतिनिधि मिलते हैं, उन सब की एक डिमांड रहती है कि ऑनलाइन गेमिंग पर प्रतिबंध लगाया जाए, इस पे स्ट्रिक्ट कड़ी कार्रवाई की जाए।
No, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know those bills well enough to give you a comment. On the face of it, it seems reasonable that anyone who does anything wrong should be liable to punishment and should not be holding a high constitutional office or a political office. I think that makes sense. On the second issue of the online gaming, I am on record. I have written an article in 2019. I've made the case for some time now that, to my mind, the government should be legalizing online gaming and taxing it, regulating it and taxing it. Because then the benefits of the money that people are spending anyway on this process can be spent on social causes. If you simply ban it, it goes underground and the mafia makes money from it. We know that what's happening with gambling in this country. There is matka, there is illegal betting on cricket, this and that. Who is getting the benefit of that? Only the crooks and criminals and gamblers. Whereas the government should have actually regulated and taxed it, as many other countries are doing elsewhere in the world.
Online gaming एक बहुत ही फार रीचिंग लेजिस्लेशन। कोई ऐसा गांव नहीं है, कोई ऐसा घर नहीं है जहां की बच्चे, युवा, महिलाएं, गरीब लोग इस चक्कर में नहीं फंसते। और जितनी आत्महत्याएं की घटना यदि हो रही है, उसके तह पर यदि आप जाएंगे, खासकर युवाओं में जो आत्महत्या हो रही है, उसमें ऑनलाइन गेमिंग सट्टेबाजी के चक्कर में ही जो है उनके पैसे डूबते हैं। जो पिताजी की कमाई है, जीवन भर की कमाई है, उसको बैंक से निकालते हैं और इसका जो नतीजा है वो फाइनली घर, परिवार सभी तबाह हो रहा है। और इतनी बड़ी ये लॉबी है, आप इसकी कल्पना नहीं कर सकते। आप ये समझें कि हमारी इकोनॉमी अभी 4 ट्रिलियन की है। ऑनलाइन गेमिंग यदि इसको लेजिस्लाइज कर दिया जाता तो ये कम से कम $10 ट्रिलियन का जो है ये इकोनॉमी होता।
And again, hey, let's look at some big numbers to measure the scale of effect that this legislation will have. 400 companies, 2 lakh jobs are now at risk. 25,000 crore rupees in investment, $3 billion in terms of FDI, 20,000 crore rupees in GST revenue, 591 million gamers, all threatened by this blanket ban. And this is not a small change. This is not casual play. This is a $3.7 billion industry standing today one of the fastest growing sectors in India's digital economy. And let's remember this, 86% of the entire revenue comes from real money gaming, RMGs. And by 2029, that particular revenue, $3.7 billion, is expected, or well, was expected to touch $9.1 billion. Now, gaming platforms say that this ban threatens the entire ecosystem of gaming, jobs, taxes, startups, even India's dream of a $1 trillion digital economy. They argue that courts have historically distinguished between what is a game of skill and what is a game of chance. And there are clear and present danger due to this blanket ban. Players will simply move to illegal offshore platforms is one concern. The mafia will take over is another concern. Fraud addiction, data breaches, they're going to rise, says the industry. And authorities could lose control over taxation and digital sovereignty. The choice is not between chaos and prohibition, but between an informed regulatory regime and, of course, the underground approach. It is a call of duty for the policymakers. But the big questions that we're trying to decode and ask today. This is the boss fight on the show tonight. Will a blanket ban solve the addiction, the crime, and the consumer harm? Or is a more nuanced, regulated approach the time of the need of the hour and the way forward for India's digital future? With us on the broadcast soon going to be Dr. Guru Sharan Singh, Secretary General of the Skill Hub Online Gaming Federation. Pavan Duggal, cybersecurity expert and advocate, Supreme Court, is soon going to be with us. Bhanu Chandra Nagarajan, political analyst and public policy advisor, with us on the broadcast here, and Professor Bijon Mishra, consumer policy expert. Bhanu, let's get the ball rolling here. One really needs to understand, because the bill calls for real money gaming. It says that this is a threat to the families and national security. On the other hand, you've got the industry that now says we've been put in a death knell. So it seems like a call of duty coming from the government, but a counter strike coming from the gaming industry. Where does, the gamer, the everyday quintessential gamer now stand? On the way to the studio, I saw a couple of people playing their PUBG. Does that get affected? Are you waging on these competitions? Can a normal FIFA game on your PlayStation go on? Because people are still connected to each other online. What's the entire bill about, and how can we educate the layman out there?
Yeah, so Kabir, this is the moral underpinnings of this is as old as time, right? How much of liberty can be curbed for the greater good, and how paternalistic can a government be? Okay, what are the things that the government needs to do so that it can protect certain people, though it takes away some freedom, right? The extreme example is drugs, right? Some people like to do drugs, right? Hard drugs I'm talking about. So, but you cannot actually, make a society addicted to drugs. So that's why there's a particular ban on it, right? But there is some leeway to allowing liquor, cigarettes, so on and so forth, which are like a lighter version of it. So where do we draw the line? It's a question that has always been before policymakers, the rulers of the time, and it's always a judgment call. Okay, so previously, so far, there was this distinction between skill and chance, right? So which the Supreme Court has said. And those distinctions actually started getting blurred, because if you take a game like poker, okay, which is a combination of both, like a fair combination of both, and it has flourished. If you see, in fact, that's one of the things that is mentioned in many of the news articles, right? So with this distinction being the roadblock, what the government has done is to have a blanket ban to see whether this improves the overall welfare of people. So obviously there is going to be the online gaming industry that is going to be affected, right? Just that, to put it crudely, some of the drug peddlers and that economy will be affected because of the drug ban, right? But that's a very harsh comparison, very harsh analogy, but you get the sense, right? So there is going to be downsides. It's not like an easy call, right? But the government has felt that the overall welfare of the people will be benefited. The people will be better off with this, and that's where I think the whole idea.
But you see what's happening in other countries as well, Bhanu. We have all of these examples at our disposal, where they license it and then they regulate it. And of course, it is a harsh analogy. Of course, addiction is a problem that the society needs to tackle. But when you're talking about drugs on one hand and gaming on the other, I do understand the point that you might be trying to make here, but are we there yet? Are we there yet where we can compare drugs and gaming together, put them on the same pedestal? Pavan Duggal, Duggal, cybersecurity expert and advocate, Supreme Court, is with us on the broadcast here. The government says, Mr. Duggal, that the ban will save people from addiction and bankruptcy. Just a couple of days back, an 11-year-old boy, a minor child, he took his own life. He died by suicide because of some purchases that he had made in a particular game. Now, whether that was a game of chance, a game of skill, we've lost that boy. The parents are bereaved, the family is still grieving. But do you accept that the industry really has a social harm problem? And if there is a social harm problem, is this reaction, this bill, will it prudently tackle those problems, or like critics are calling it, this is a knee-jerk bill that's now come to light?
I believe that the harm to society is self-evident. Indians are bleeding in this online money gaming ecosystem. And every day, thousands of crore rupees are going out of India. People are losing their hard-earned monies. So the government, keeping in mind the constitutional provisions of being a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, has decided to come up with this new bill. Now, the bill is not as it's currently sought to be painted out. It's only looking at limiting the prohibition to online money games or online money gaming service. That's what all. In a thumb rule, what the law is saying is, hold on, anything which is done for money, when you pay money for playing a game, when you have an expectation for winning money in a game, that is an online money game. And the law has sought to obliterate any distinction between whether it's a game of skill or game of chance. This is not to say that the entire gaming industry is going down the drain. Sorry, it's only a very, very small segment that sought to be regulated. Please understand, the much bigger part of the segment which is still not being tapped in the Indian ecosystem is the e-sports segment, is the online game segment where monies are not involved, is the online social game segment. And I think all these have been sought to be given an indirect fillip.
But Mr. Duggal, from a regulatory standpoint, banning the real money gaming, and we've been broadcasting those numbers as well, $3.7 billion is what the evaluation stands at, today. 86% of this entire revenue comes from real money gaming, which of course is now banned under this blanket ban. Whilst we're looking at this from a regulatory standpoint, banning the RMG, do you think, is it going to be effective, or is it now going to simply push our users to offshore illegal sites and, the mafia now taking over? There are different approaches to this as well.
First and foremost, let me begin by saying that in today's internet context, banning is not a great idea. Why? For the very simple reason, you can never ban things till such time you actually delete it from source. And more so when these online money games are going to be located on servers outside the territorial boundaries of India, it's going to get more harder to identify who are the stakeholders, state or non-state actors behind them, and to go after. Though this particular law has sought to give extra territorial jurisdiction to its provisions, our documented history of last 25 years under the Information Technology Act 2000 tells us that it's very, very hard to give effect or implementation to extraterritorial provisions. But I think the government is committed to the social cause. And it's for that particular purpose, it's not just this ban, it's also this massive powers given to arrest without warrant, the powers for blocking content, which is going to be important. Now, these are important tools that's going to be used by the government. Needless to say, there's need for more checks and balances. Needless to say, this kind of entire activity could potentially be coming under judicial review. And needless to say, I expect that some sections of the stakeholders are likely to challenge the constitutional validity of such a law as and when it's going to be passed. But the moral streak of behind this particular thought process, the constitutional commitment towards protecting the Indian vulnerable sections of society, or protecting the Indian monies, which are hard-earned monies, going down the drain of the online money gaming, I think it's a great step forward. More so when the government has said, whether it's a game of skill or game of chance, no problems, all things are banned. And of course, you still go ahead and defy the ban, you get imprisonment of 3 years and 1 crore rupees fine or both. And these are non-bailable offences, cognizable under the law, which effectively means that the deterrence is right on the table. In addition, the provisions specifically stating, should you want to go ahead and advertise in any media about these online money games, gets you 2 years jail time, 50 lakh rupees fine. But a much bigger component is this component or the obligation on these institutions and intermediaries Should banks and other institutions be seen to be helping or offering any services to these kind of players, they could potentially be also facing criminal liability of 3 years imprisonment, non-bailable, and 1 crore rupees fine. So the message of deterrence is what sought to be given. But of course, we will.
And the message is quite clear. The message is quite clear. 1 crore rupee in fine. I mean, that's a massive deterrent that's been kept on the table here. But like you pointed out, checks and balances that will be required. And of course, this needs to be looked under the legal lens a little bit thoughtfully as well. I spoke to some of my friends. Some of them are Twitch streamers, some of them are everyday gaming streamers, and you know, that's the apathy that they're going through because they still don't know what this bill is, how badly this is going to affect them. How will that bill suddenly change that boy's, entire future who's sitting on that seat in front of a computer, billing hours on games like Fortnite, like you've got various games that involves online gaming. Now, what is a social online game? How there are so many tournaments that take place on these, first-person shooter games. So many of those things have come to light. Now, the gamer out there is not well versed with what this bill really does to their lives and future. But Professor Bijon Mishra, from a consumer policy expert, do you think banning RMG will really stop the young people from playing, or will this now push them to shady offshore accounts? When the government is framing the gaming as source of addiction, a reason for these suicides, do you think that's a fair representation of the gaming industry? Because the industry says that we've been put in a death knell, 2 lakh jobs hang in the balance, so much of money in FDI, so much of money in GST contributions, and the sunrise sector that the Prime Minister himself has heavily emphasized on so long. It seems to be in direct contradiction to that, or are we reading the salient features of this bill all wrong? Professor Bijon Mishra, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm just coming. There was signal issue. Yeah.
All right. Seems like a little bit of technical difficulty. Professor Mishra, can you hear us?
I missed out the question.
Okay, all right.
Yes, I can hear you now.
The bottom line and the basic question is, from a consumer point of view, the government frames this as a source of addiction and the reason for these deaths by suicide. Do you think this is the fair representation of what the actual gaming industry offers to our youngsters out there? Today, people are actually looking at esports as a career option.
So, Kabir, I am representing the consumers, and I'll speak on behalf of them.
Okay.
The consumers definitely needed this legislation to come into action. We have been demanding that on behalf of the citizens and the consumers because there were enough evidences that many vulnerable population or the citizens were getting addicted and they were actually losing hard-earned money, which was not of any kind of a social developmental asset was there. There was in terms of government getting rid of it, but much more was going in the country. You have yourself given those data today to the citizens who are your viewers. So how do you justify? So I firstly want to congratulate the government to have heard us and bring us legislation which is in the interest of the consumer. That's the first thing. The second thing is any commercial activity conducted in our country must have a regulatory oversight. It can't be left just open. There has to be a regulator who has to check and balance in terms of no misuse and no taking any kind of an activity which will be enriching themselves at the cost of the consumer. And as you know, India never allowed any gambling in our country. It was always a ban till this digital, gambling addiction came into vogue. And it was high time we kept on telling the government that you can't have a discriminatory approach. You can't say that you can't have gambling in your country and then you allow these people merrily make money out of poor, vulnerable population. So you have one law which will be adoptable and acceptable and non-discriminatory, which is very, very important. So what I have been able to understand is, in the wisdom of the lawmakers, out of enough evidences which are there, they have come out with a legislation which, of course, as you know, laws are not static, it's dynamic. So it can always get amended. the
Yeah,
way
which
it
is what Mr.
needed
Duggal
to
also
be
said,
done.
that it will have to, stand the test of time, and we'll have to see what really happens with this law. But, Bhanu Chandra Nagarajan continues to be with us on the broadcast. Bhanu, the Prime Minister has called the gaming a sunrise sector in his Digital India push. Again, a question to you. It seems like that this legislation is in contradiction to that vision. And why I say that is because the industry has already warned of 2 lakh jobs that are going to be lost, 20,000 crore rupees GST revenue could be wiped out. How does the government weigh in these challenges, those losses against the social concerns that are now being highlighted by various union ministers?
Yeah. So to paraphrase one of your own comments a while ago, Kabir, somebody can have esports as a career, but somebody cannot have gambling as a career. Right? So that's the basic distinction. See, everything cannot be measured by money. Okay, I'm sounding very syrupy, but the social welfare bit is something that we need to take care of. The cumulative welfare, the social welfare that accumulates by people not going bankrupt, by families not getting disintegrated, people not committing suicide. You can't put a money value to that. Okay, that's number one. Number two, like what you said, there can be other consequences. Many of these kids that are like even people that are actually doing online gambling, they can now move to esports. Increasing that industry completely. Right. So this is, as I said before, this is a call that has been taken consistently, like over a period of time. In fact, if you look at Singapore, okay, Lee Kuan Yew banned gambling in Singapore, but they still have a casino which, with people from other countries.
No, you're right, Bhanu, but a lot of people, I'd say 80% of the people pick up their mobile phones or their gaming consoles just for recreation. Nobody wants to make a career out of this per se. I mean, it's great if somebody wants to become an e-sport athlete, but
esports is a big deal, Kabir. People can become chess players or
no, of course they can, but do they want to? Many wouldn't want to. Many would want to just play a little Spider-Man game.
I agree. So, that's the choice that, see, esports is not banned. Okay, let's be very clear. It's the gambling part that is banned, right? So, people can go and become like whatever.
Let's make this clear. Let's make this clear. And if I'm wrong, maybe Mr. Duggal can come in as well. There is a game of skill and there is a game of chance. The game of chance is where the gambling aspect comes out. But there are several game of skills that also include real money. You can wager off that money in a tournament, let's say. You have a game of skill, but then you have 10 different players playing that same game of skill, and now they can probably bet some money, wager money on a particular game. That also accounts as gambling. So we're talking about the game of skill that also uses some sort of money. People are buying skins, they're buying, personalized guns in first-person shooters, probably, shoes for your character inside a game. All of that can also require actual money to go into the system, and that's where the industry is losing out, I think, and that's why the industry wrote to the Union Home Minister. Mr. Duggal, let me come to you. The government says that the ban will save people from addiction and bankruptcy. Critics are saying that you're crying jobs in FDI only because you want to protect your own profits. How credible is this argument coming from, let's say, some startup that's making a game of skill but has some room for some money to come in as well? I mean, these people who are building and developing games, they need to earn and fill their pockets as well.
Sure, everybody has a right to earn, but everybody does not have a right to earn by blooding their hands with the bloods of innocent people. That's the fundamental scenario. Number two, what this particular law has, or this bill has sought to do, is very, very limited. If they are saying that the entire gaming sector is going to be impacted, that may not be factually correct, because it's only the online money game or the online money gaming service that's being sought to be made prohibited. Why? Because it's in sync with what the thought process has been under the Public Gambling Act. It's been in sync with what the government has been taking a stand. But now the scenario is, the issue is not of game of skill and chance. When you look at this bill, it clearly says whether you are a game of skill, whether you are a game of chance, the moment there's going to be exchange of money, that's not going to be permissible. Now, that being so, clearly all those innocent people who are losing their monies, their livelihoods, their lifelong savings are now potentially going to be benefited. Why? Because there's now have a remedy. Previously, they had no remedy. They lost their money, they lost their livelihood, they lost their future, and there was no remedies available. Now, there's criminal penalty that's been sought to be given. Yes, the bigger challenge will be that a lot of these issues in this particular legislation will have to be appropriately thought over. Why? Because in this legislation, you're actually riding a running tiger. And that being so, you will have to calibrate your approaches as you continue to ride the running tiger, which is that you'll have to put in
So when the
appropriate checks
gaming
and
industry
balances,
says that this bill
the
is a
rules and regulations.
this
under which-
bill is a knee-jerk reaction, are they not in? I mean, are they not correct when they're saying that? Isn't that a credible argument?
Well, even if it is an argument, the reality is, how does that argument face in the light of the constitutional principles? Your argument of a knee-jerk reaction fades into insignificance when an action is taken in pursuance of the principles that are enshrined in the Constitution of India under the directive principle of state policy. It's been categorically said that it's the responsibility of the state to protect the users and its citizens from these vices. So that's what it's done. But yes, there
That's
are
another
practical
interesting
challenges.
point.
You will have to address these.
That's another
These are
interesting
issues
point,
with
Mr.
the-
Dugal, because various state governments have, made their own legislations on this, and now this is a uniform blanket ban across the nation. But we also have with us Dr. Gurusharan Singh, Secretary General of the Skill Hub Online Gaming Federation. Many thanks for joining us here. Sir, first up, let us know if the ban does go through, will your companies shut shop? There are so many companies. Will they go offshore or adapt with the non-money models? Let me give you one example very quickly and then you can answer. Let's say I'm making a FIFA team. I'm making my ultimate team that does not require actual money. It requires points and coins, which are, EAFC based coins. But to get some of those extra coins, maybe I'll have to use my debit card and credit card. So money does come into account again. So are we looking at banning of FIFA altogether? What's going to happen?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. First of all, we as a sports federation, we welcome and support this bill of the government, which has clearly distinguished between the game for money, game for profiteering, and the game for competition for the amateur players. We as a sports federation, we support the players to play game for the competition, which are recognized by the International Olympic Committee. As you are aware that now e-sport is part of the Olympic Charter also. It has also been approved by IOC.
That's
and
right.
Also, it has also been approved by the OCA, Olympic Council of Asia.
No, that's right, sir. But tell us, if the ban comes into place, what will happen to those companies then next? Are they going to shift to non-money models?
They should. You see, either they will shift out of India to continue their business, or they will.
That's exactly what we were getting at, Mr. Dugal, Banu. This is exactly what we were talking about, weren't we? They will move offshore, and that's where the shady element comes in. So what are we really stopping here? The addiction will continue. If somebody who's addicted can go and play on another website, you've got VPNs, you've got proxies. This needs to be relooked at again. And I think my limited take here would be that all these industries that are coming out with their messaging, the AIGF, the EGF, and the FIFS, with their messaging that has now gone through, I think everybody is, of course, worried about their profit, but this is a little bit of a knee-jerk bill. Maybe we need to revisit this and relook at this. I've completely run out of time here. Don't know the final, the jury's still out or who's won this Call of Duty versus Counter-Strike battle, but we're going to continue to talk about this. Many thanks for watching In Your Interest. That's all the time we have for you. Top developments right on the other side. Many thanks to all my panelists. Associate sponsor, Dyna Premium Beauty Soap. पहली झलक करे खूबसूरत.
Chandigarh, Coimbatore, NCR and Bangalore, Jaipur, Ahmedabad, Raipur and Hyderabad. We've been here, we've been there. Veka's been just everywhere.
सर वाटरप्रूफिंग के लिए बेस्ट है.
हमेशा वाला क्यों नहीं?
वेंकी जी, एक छोटा सा गिफ्ट नया बिरला ओपस पेंट्स देने के लिए.
ऐसा क्या है इसमें?
बिरला ओपस अश्योरेंस
मतलब प्रोडक्ट वारंटी.
वारंटी तो है ही, ये एक्स्ट्रा है. 1 साल में वाटरप्रूफिंग को कुछ भी हुआ तो वापस करके दें.